Senator Hough here for our weekly update. This week I want to talk about the justice reinvestment legislation. It's actually on the floor of the Senate this week. And what it is a large comprehensive reform of our criminal justice system. The legislation is actually about 84 pages long, and it's a bipartisan piece of legislation. It really deals with our criminal offenders from the front end of the system when they're sentenced to the time they serve in prison until when they get out, being on parole and then re-entry, trying to get jobs back in the community. And so what we did is we really looked at what other states had done first. We started off this summer, and primarily we looked at what a lot of the red states had done. States like Texas, states like Georgia, states like Utah, and how they had made reforms that not only saved taxpayer money, but also lowered the crime rate. Because ultimately, as legislators, our responsibility to you is to increase public safety, to do things that lower the crime rate. But also, we also care about, when possible, restoring offenders and restoring victims. And this legislation seeks to accomplish all of those things. So let me give you an example of one of the programs that we put in here and then explain how that would affect the rest of the legislation. So right now when somebody is serving on parole or probation, so they've been found guilty, they've been convicted, but they're out serving in what we call community corrections, meaning there's a parole or probation officer watching them, checking in with them on a weekly basis. And a lot of times these folks have what's called technical violations, meaning that they violated a term of their supervision. So they missed an appointment, they had a dirty drug test, something like that. Normally when the officer or judge looks at that, they'll end up determining that it's not worth the cost of incarcerating somebody $38,000 a year for that one violation. But unfortunately what happens is these violations end up piling up. So they get 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and then finally the judge or officer will step in and throw the book at them. And by throwing the book, they get their whole sentence back, which is 5 years, and it costs taxpayers a lot of money. And it's actually just counterproductive to what we want to do, because what we want to put in place is swift and immediate sanctions, so that if they miss an appointment or they do wrong behavior, we immediately come in and there's a punishment and a consequence, so that we break antisocial type behavior. The long and short of it is these kind of policies in other states have proven to reduce the crime rate, and they save taxpayer money. Because instead of somebody failing in parole or probation and serving 5 years in prison at a cost of $40,000 a year to taxpayers, instead, by saving that money, we can use it and invest it in other things. And so ultimately, the reforms in total in the Justice Reinvestment Project, by lowering the crime or lowering the incarceration rate for nonviolent offenders, and then for violent offenders, focusing our resources on them. And in this bill, we actually increase the penalty for murderers, second-degree murder, and kidnapping. But overall, we save $25 million, and we take that money and we invest it in drug treatment, mental health treatment, in hiring more parole and probation officers, reforms that will ultimately help lower the crime rate. So in Texas, where they did this, they ended up saving, to this date, over $2 billion, and the crime rate is the lowest it's been since 1968. So that's what we're looking at doing here in Maryland. Like I said, it's actually, unlike DC or unlike some of the other bills you see down here in Annapolis, it's been a very bipartisan process up to this point, and we're very hopeful that this legislation will pass with large bipartisan support again next week. So have a great week.